W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. I am the Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Let me say a hotep, Baragani, and hello, and how are you? Welcome to another episode of It's Time, and we focus on social justice issues and its effect upon us in the immediate present, not like the other broadcasts, which tend to be more into the metaphysical. We're trying to stay with where the rubber meets the road. And let me say, therefore, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but never good night, and never ever goodbye. Excuse me, I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church, and we're located on the campus and in the building on 8916 South Main with our supporting church, which happens to be the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, pastored by my good friend Dr. Della F. Hollinas. And there will be services there tonight, which is evangelism night. We welcome you to come by and exercise your gift within reason. And Sundays at 10 a.m. is Sunday school, naturally, followed by our morning worship, which generally begins around 11:15. All right, and we welcome you to any and all of our weekly services. And we never closed down for the pandemic, and the Lord blessed us to come through with shining colors. And so we're back on the road again, and we are worshiping and communing and fellowshipping. All right. As we said, this particular offering presentation that you are viewing is based on more of a social justice. Social justice always must include the environmental and certainly the economic parts of our sojourn here in this settler colonialism nation. And so therefore we believe in reparations, and I spoke last week, and I thank God again that the first Reparations Commission is now operating in the state of California, and they have a 2-year mandate to research and gather information that goes all the way back to when California came into the Union, which was in 1850. But of course, it was a territory before that. And although California did not come in as a slave state, there were those on the southern end of California that definitely wanted to California to be a slave state, which is not to say that Northern California did not have its share of slaves, but it is to observe the fact that God in His providence and in His grace allowed the first Reparations Commission in the country to be established here in the state of California. And they are now meeting and have been meeting, and I hope to meet with them and give my input and to listen to their deliberations as well. All right. We have a portion of scripture. Well, of course, once you start reading the scripture, you don't have to be stuck with just one. But of course, where it deals with reparations, I always like to cite the scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 15, beginning at verse 12, which says, "And if thy brother an Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him or her go out free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let them go away empty, but thou shalt furnish them liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress. Of that which the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give share unto them. All right? And so that's our first reparations text. Now the second reparations text, which is very descriptive of our current world condition, is the familiar portion of Ephesians chapter 6, which says, put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Very descriptive. And if it was that way in Paul's day, it is even more so pronounced in our days, that we need to put on the entire armor. We can't leave any part of the armor off, because the enemy will seek out your weakness and will exploit it, whether it can be economics, fame, fortune, fame, vices. If he can exploit it, he's going to exploit it. If he can't scare you out, he will try to overcome you with kindness. You must be on your toes, and you must not think that anything is too low or for the enemy, because as we live in this settler colonialist country, we know that nothing is beneath the institutions or the establishment that is the United States of America. This week we are still hearing the sounds and rumors of war over there in Ukraine. Ukraine is a nation unto itself after the fall of the Soviet Union. All of these breakaway republics began to assert themselves, and of course Vladimir Putin of Russia would like to reunite or rejoin. I think there's a technical term called irredentism, which means the policy of or practice of attempting to reconnect the borders of a nation. And so the NATO and the West, which means United States, are attempting to withstand the onslaught of the Russians, and so far they've done a good job. The British have supplied Stinger Javelin missiles, which they are used to destroy tanks and shoot down airplanes. And so the war is not going as smoothly as the Russians would like it, which is not to say that they're not going to win ultimately, because they have the sheer manpower and they have the equipment. What may undermine the Russians, of course, is their morale, is the will of the Russian soldier to invade another country and kill other women and children, and they may not have the stomach for that. But like I said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And you can't put nothing past a nation as the Ronald Neva said in his book Moral Man and Immoral Society, what one person would not do when they're with the group, they may do anything and justify it as being a group action, or the others were doing it, so I did it too. That's the government policy. And so you cannot take anything for granted. And this week we found out that Jeannie Thomas, who is married to Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, was a supporter of the January 6th movement. Now she says that she was at the January 6th movement, but she left before Donald Trump made his speech because she claimed she was cold. They got some interesting quotes on her. She says, I went home just before the president spoke because it was cold. I played no role with those who planned or led the January 6, 2020 event. All right. She says there are important and legitimate and substantive questions about achieving goals like electoral integrity, racial equality, and political accountability that a democratic system like ours needs to be able to discuss and debate rationally in the political square. All right, now you notice she uses one of the favorite catchphrases of the January 6th rebellion, which says that Donald Trump won the election and it was stolen from him. Notice she says we need to have electoral integrity, racial equality, and political accountability. So those are the talking points, mind you, that Donald Trump and his ilk have been parroting. Remember that there are those even in the Congress who still side with Donald Trump and were actually willing to overthrow the election, 2020 election. And in spite of the insurrection, mind you, they tried to hold a vote, and I think it was 139 Republicans. Even after the people had tried to storm the Capitol and had injured and 140 police officers, there were those congressmen, elected congressmen, there in the House of Representatives, and also are persuaded in the Senate, who were vociferous in attempting to say that the election was rigged, which was Donald Trump's talking point, or stolen. And they tried, Ted Cruz being among them, Josh Hawley being another, McCarthy to a more or less degree, but 139, you hear me, Republicans that were trying to overturn the election. Now, granted, the Electoral College is a relic of slavery and should have been done away with at the end of the Civil War. But it was retained. And so you and I go to vote, but we have to vote for electors who we trust will honor our vote that we have registered. So that's why you have a huge popular vote, but you may lose the electoral vote, because the first candidate to reach 270 in the American scheme is declared the winner. So we don't have one man, one vote, which if we had done it that way, then Mr. Biden would have won hands down, because he had 84 million, whereas Donald Trump had 75 million. That is the largest electoral turnout in American history. And if we don't do that again, we are going to lose the midterms when November rolls around. But lest I get off of what I'm talking about, I started out talking about Jeannie Thomas, which is Clarence Thomas' wife, and how she has been a member of the Heritage Foundation, which is a very conservative think tank. And she says she has no influence on her husband, but you know how pillow talk goes. And therefore, we have to look at her, Jeannie Thomas, with an eye of suspicion, because if she was at that rally on January the 6th, she's a Trump sympathizer, and you got to believe that Clarence Thomas is a Trump supporter, even though he never says it. So that brings us to the question that I want to raise. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you that she had put on her, Jeannie Thomas had put on her Facebook page, let's see, political square. I love MAGA people. God bless each of you standing up or praying. She says, and that's on her Facebook page. I guess she must have taken it down, but it was up there on January 6th. Then after the melee and the milieu and the failure to overthrow the election and the failure to ransack the Capitol, then the people left, and she wisely began to pull in her horns. But she got it up there. I love MAGA people. That means make America great again. That's what MAGA means. And God bless each of you standing up or praying. That's what she had on her Facebook page and on her Twitter account and on her Instagram account on January 6th. So then, what are we to surmise about these Supreme Court justices? I bring another point to you as by way of further evidence. I'm not trying to undermine the Supreme Court of the United States. I just help us to put ourselves on notice that you may, just because a person assumes that robe, that they may not do anything to help the little guy, because they only answer to the business community, the corporate interest. And one of the nefarious cases that was decided by that Supreme Court way back in 1856 and 57, which was the Dred Scott decision, actually led to the Civil War, because people were so incensed over the fact that a Supreme Court justice, Justice Taney in this case, and those that were on the Supreme Court with him, and who were, in other words, the justices that concurred with Taney, and they were in the majority, were slaveholders, and they went along, and he wrote the opinion that said a white man did not have an obligation to honor or respect any enslaved person, or colored people, or Negro, as we would call in that document. the Negro didn't have no rights. In other words, that a white man was obliged to respect. No, and that was way back yonder. And then the cases began to roll, and you can talk about how the murderers of the Colfax County, Louisiana, were acquitted when their case came to the Supreme Court, and on the case of Crookshank, and the Supreme Court ruled that there was no harm, no foul, and that there were no violations because the mob that had killed the black sheriff there in Colfax County was not acting as a state-sponsored entity or institution, but they were therefore declared not guilty by virtue of the fact that they were not a government-sponsored institution or entity or organization. Those are just two of the things that ought to make you be on your guard. And then the case of Dick Cheney comes to mind. Remember, Dick Cheney was vice president under George Bush. Well, really, Cheney was the president. He just didn't have the seat. Because you remember, he moved from Wyoming to Texas. And he was supposed to have been finding somebody to candidate, but then he put himself as the candidate. And of course, he had been the head of Halliburton, which was an oil field company that owned Brown and Root and all those other oil corporation interests. Well, he was a friend of Justice Antonin Scalia, who was on the Supreme Court. And as it happened, Antonin Scalia went on a hunting trip on board Dick Cheney's it was government-owned, private Gulfstream, private jet, and were down there 3 days, and then Cheney came back, and Scalia and his son and son-in-law stayed down there till I think that Friday. Then they came back, but they went down there on Cheney's private plane. You hear me? And the case that was before the U.S. Supreme Court was the Sierra Club, Dick Cheney versus Vice President of the United States versus the Sierra Club. They were trying to get Cheney to release the transcripts of that secret meeting that they had had in the White House, because under the rules of law, there was any meeting in the White House between a government official supposed to be a record, and if it wasn't an open meeting, then the transcript had to be released. And of course, Dick Cheney won that fight before the Supreme Court. Scalia had a very in-depth and scholarly dodge as to why he could not recuse himself from that case. He said everybody in Washington has friends, and a lot of the people on the Supreme Court were there because of their friendships. And so if it was a friendship thing, then it was not stated so in the law, so he did not have to recuse himself. I say all of that because these present iterations, remember, they have a 6-3 majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. And 6-3, 6 conservatives versus 3 liberals. And unless Clarence Thomas should resign, or one of those others, I think he's the oldest, and God help us, to get somebody in his seat that is more toward the liberal side, because Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch and John Roberts, who plays both sides of the fence, and I'm missing somebody, but you can look it up. They have a cabal that, well, before it was 5-4, now it is 6-3. 6-3. So they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and just like they gutted the Chapter 4 of Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, if we don't get some help or some relief to kind of get some balance back in that Supreme Court, then the Republicans will hold sway on that Supreme Court for another generation. Remember, Clarence Thomas was put on there by George Herbert Walker Bush. Herbert Walker Bush is dead. Clarence Thomas is still on the Supreme Court. Elections have consequences. And that's why we're praying so hard that this black woman, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, can get confirmed, because we know that Biden has a guilt complex because he was so hard on Anita Hill. And I think he's doing his best to make up for that by putting every position he can put a black woman, he's putting her in there. Got to commend him for that. He sure messed up that one, because he was the chairman of the what do you call that committee? Judicial Committee that held the hearings to confirm or reject Clarence Thomas, and Miss Anita Hill presented herself. And she was greatly humiliated and embarrassed, but she took the stand. And Joe Biden was the chairman. So seems like he has a lot of atoning, which he's trying to make up for. I can't swear that because of that Anita Hill thing is why he's so bent on putting a black woman everywhere he can stick one. You notice he chose Kamala Harris to be his running mate. She ran for president on her own, but lost. And after he got the nomination, then he picked Kamala Harris, the first black woman. 2 minutes. All right. So, my friends, my brothers, and my sisters, the time for us to be about our Father's business is upon us, because Halliburton is still in business, Dick Cheney yet lives, and the Supreme Court is still there. And so we must renew our voting privileges. If we have grown slack, and go down and re-register to vote, make sure that we're registered, and because votes matter, and your vote counts. You don't think so? Just look at the last election, and it'll tell you how vitally your vote is needed. You cannot be like the black Muslims and take a juvenile approach or immature approach. You're going to have to make sure that your voice is heard. Represent. Vote, because your vote counts. All right? And to my good friends who are still working as I hasten to get out of here, I say unto you, God bless you. I hope you can get every dollar that you can for your labor, because once you give up your labor, you can't get it back. And if hard work was all it took to make it, every slave coming out of slavery would have been a millionaire. So if you're with some corporation or some company or some business and they don't want to pay you, take my advice. Don't work for them. Thank you, Doc.